Hello, I'm Philipp Meyer. Welcome to my video blog. In this video I will show you the violet wand I have in my collection for over 20 years now. And the video is also somehow dedicated to my godfather who died a couple of years ago, because it was him who bought me the violet wand on a flea market when I was 13 years old. So this is the mystic box, so let's open that. And here it is. That's a violet wand. You might ask yourself why it's called a violet wand. The reason is simple. You have all these wands here and they are filled with a gas. I think it's argon. And if they are connected to this device, you can plug them in there. And you turn it on, they are glowing in a violet light. And there are also violet sparks that are coming out of that. I will show you later. That's amazing. These things back in the days were supposed to be some high frequency medical devices for curing all kinds of diseases. Today would probably sell something like that on QVZ as a different shopping channel. The way it operates, it's basically, actually that's a Nikola Tesla invention. Tesla is also one of my biggest idols, by the way. It's basically a little handheld Tesla coil, which is in here, and some support electronics that drives that Tesla coil. Before we dig deeper into the technology here, I would suggest we try some wands out and see what happens. It's plugged into the power line. Switch to 220 volts, and now let's turn this thing on. There's this bubble here, and now let's go see what happens. So we already see the glow, and if I come close with my finger, to see what happens, there are sparks hitting my finger. And this is really beautiful. It doesn't hurt, it's more like a sensation. So apparently that didn't hurt me, and I still can confirm it wasn't painful at all. You might ask how that works and why it's not all too dangerous. However, I strongly discourage to repeat the experiments I show you here with some random violet wand that is in an unknown state. So this glass tubing you have here is basically an insulator for DC. And also for near DC, like the 50 Hertz alternating current from the power line. So that won't come through this glass tubing. What comes through is an HF current. And HF has the interesting property, it doesn't go very deep into your body. It flows mostly on the outside of your body. So that's also the reason why I only feel a slight sensation. So it hits my finger, it doesn't go very deep into my body, it flows on the outside down to the earth. So that's the idea behind that. This effect is called the skin effect. When I was a child and when I repaired this unit, which took me over a year of research, but I finally managed to make it, this scared the hell out of me. I mean, I knew that I have to be careful, and this is probably high voltage. And I was very careful. I never touched this when I was a child because I hadn't the knowledge to understand this properly. So I was really feared. And when I did my first experiments I did with that. So this has two contacts. I had this in there, one contact here, one contact was earthed, and I had sparks traveling at the outside of the glass, hitting from here to there. So that was still explainable. So the same might have happened with DC as well. So that's was not that scary. But when I tried the glass tubes, and I had some earth pin here, and the sparks are hitting out of the glass. I mean, you have seen these sparks are exited the glass from the glass surface. That was not explainable because I was in school that told me that glass is an insulator for electricity, and that's it. So of course now I know better. I know that glass is a dielectric substance. So it's basically like a capacitor. It's the alternating current and the charges of that enable the basically the change of the charge is what it enables the current to flow. It's just an HF current. So yeah, and as I said, this is based on the Tesla principle, and I think we now open the unit up and see what's inside and see how that actually works. Okay, here we have the guts of the device, and let's start with the handpiece. You can see that we have a very low number of turns here. It's the primary side, and underneath this oil paper there's probably a coil with much higher count of turns. As you know, your usual Tesla coil setup is like that. You have this primary coil with a very few turns and a very high number of turns on your secondary coil. And as a child I already knew how to understand this. A low number of turns, that's the primary side of a transformer. That was understandable for me. But what was like magic to me is, if you look closely, you have this contact here. That's obviously the contact to the secondary coil, but you don't see anywhere another contact from the secondary coil going anywhere. So that's kind of strange. I mean, when you are in school, especially the younger folks should now listen. If you're in school, you are told that a current can only flow if the circuit is closed. Yeah, that's true in theory. That's perfectly true. In practice, there are sometimes very odd ways to close a circuit. Of course, we have a closed circuit, but the contact, the secondary contact, the second contact of the secondary coil is hidden underneath here. And while you're holding this thing in your hand, you have a capacity. You are coupling to the secondary coil, and you become the earth. And you are the earth contact. It's just a coil and a capacitor in series. And yeah, that's where I connect the wand. And let me fetch the schematic I've drawn and thrown away in the meantime by cleaning up. Sorry. Yeah, here we have the schematic of the handpiece. And yeah, this is the contact that goes nowhere. And here contact to the wand, and that's the normal primary coil. And that's connected to the driver unit. Let's call it driver unit. And yeah, here we have some additional magic. We have a coil. I was a child. By the way, I was about 13 years old when me and my godfather saw this device on a flea market. We got it for 80 euro. That's today about 80 Deutsche Mark. Yeah, Deutsche Mark was the currency back in the days here in Germany. Today that might be 50 euros. So yeah. We have back to the topic. Here we have a coil, and we see some contact here, and the coil is basically nothing different than an electromagnet. It's not a transformer or something you might think. So it's just an electromagnet, and here we see, if you carefully look into that, we see the spring material here. And let's see what happens if I turn the knob here, and you should see it. So now I turn that. It's kind of hard with one hand. But now it's a little bit turned, and now you see the contact is closed. So that's basically the initial condition of the circuit, the closed contact. And once current flows through these electromagnet, it opens the contact. And that's basically the same principle you have on vintage doorbells. That's called Wagnersche hammer. Because it basically starts to hammering, because this obviously opens the contact, and then the electromagnet shuts off, and contact is closed again. There's again current flowing through the electromagnet. That's how it's working in a doorbell. Here it's used in a smarter way, I must say. Before we go into the circuit, we also have the capacitor here, which is the primary capacitor of the Tesla coil. So it's already part of the Tesla circuit. You have that here, and as you know, you have something in your Tesla transformer. You also need some kind of switch. In the more powerful installations, you have a sparkling gap. You have your usual sparkling gap setup, but here it's different. This is something like a low power Tesla coil, and we also have a switch to switch between 120 and 110 volts for international currents. That switch is implemented very simple. It just shorts out a part of the coil here. And by that you have just a shorter coil, and then you can run 110 volts. So the way that works is very simple and easy to understand, but I must admit there's a drawing mistake. Imagine this switch closed in its initial state. So what happens if we send a current into this path here, is just it flows down through that coil, down here, through the closed switch, through that coil, down to Earth. So what happens is the magnetic field is building up around this coil, and it attracts this metal plate here. See the metal plate on this spring material that gets attracted, and a switch opens. That charges up the capacitor, because the capacitor is no longer shorted out by these fairly short trays you've seen in the hand paste. That's actually very short. It shows it has a very low resistance. So the cap is charged up, and once it's charged up, there's no current whatsoever flowing through the capacitor anymore, because it becomes basically an open circuit. And once this happens, the metal plate is no longer attracted, the switch closes, and then that part here begins to oscillate, because that's an oscillator which oscillates on its resonant frequency, and the resonant frequency of the primary oscillator is the same as in the second oscillator. Even if I haven't drawn any caps here, you have the parasitic capacitance of the vent, of course, and you have some capacity of your hand holding the handpiece. So you have a circuit, an oscillating circuit here as well. And since they two are resonant, the energy from the primary circuit couples into the secondary circuit, and since there are much more turns here, the voltage is multiplied. So that's the idea behind it. That's why you get a high frequency, high voltage out of this thing. I'm not sure if it was super clear to see how the secondary oscillating circuit of the Tesla coil is closed. So I have another picture here. you see that's the secondary coil of the Tesla oscillator, and this should be the hand of the operator, and the hand of course is grounded because the operator is standing on the floor with both feet. When the operator holds the handpiece, parasitic capacitance between the secondary coil and the operator's hand is building up. So that's what you see here. That's the parasitic capacitance. So the operator's hand is, so to say, part of the secondary side of the Tesla coil, which is fine. It's not dangerous. As we learned, HF is only traveling on the outside of your skin. And yeah, here the wand is connected, and here again, this is some of one of the operator's extremity. Let's say that's just his arm, so to say. Then between the wand and his arm, there are also parasitic capacitance building up, and as you see, the circuit is closed. And since on the secondary side, on the primary side, you clearly have seen the capacitor inside the device. In the for the secondary side, that's not so visible. We only see the coil, and basically the needed capacity of the secondary side of the oscillator is entirely formed through parasitic capacitance, and of course the capacitance of the wand also plays a role because it's filled with the conductive gas. You also have the surface of the wand as also a capacitor, and it's not only between the operator's arm and the wand, it's also between everything, between every object nearby. So I hope that makes it clear. So as I said, took me a year to repair it because I had no knowledge whatsoever about HF and Tesla coils. Never heard about that when I was 13. You must imagine this. You kids today, you are in a stellar position because you now have the internet and you have basically all the knowledge of the world to your fingertips. I didn't have that at the time, and so I had to do all the stuff myself. The guy who sold us the device sent me on a false trace. Unfortunately, that was also some reason why it took so long. He told me, oh yeah, that device, it smells a bit when it's operated. That's perfectly normal because these transformers back in the days were insulated with wax and blah blah blah. Of course, I believed him, and yeah, when we arrived home, we plugged it in. It made these sparkling noise you heard, but it didn't operate. Nothing happened. But it really smelled. It was really smelly. Yeah, so a solution had to be found. First of all, we assumed that these glass bulbs here, that the gas they might be gassy, so that's what we assumed. But back in the days, I also played with different high voltage sources, and there were also these there were still these lighters around which had high voltage piezoelectric crystal inside. So that's something I had back in the days, and I experimented with that. And especially that one came in handy. I noticed that actually, at least that one worked. It gave me a red-orange light because that's the only one that has neon in it. So that worked. And so I knew that it couldn't be the glass bulbs. So the glass stuff were perfectly okay. So it had to be something with the device itself. So after a bit of research, I thought by myself, okay, I don't see any problems with the mechanics and so on. It looked okay. So I knew that I had to check the parts. So there was some oil paper capacitor right here. And I knew that a capacitor could store charge. And yeah, I just removed the cap and did a little test, tried to charge it up. And I noticed it didn't hold any charge and it appeared to be shorted out. And then I knew that the cap was faulty. And that also was the reason why it smelled, because the cap was somehow bad and basically burned from the inside. Yeah, then I found this 1 microfarad capacitor from an old phone. And yeah, it wasn't exactly the exact size I needed. I think it was 1/2 of a microfarad. So I had this 1 microfarad capacitor, and I just tried it out, and I noticed it worked perfectly fine. It immediately worked. I had a bright neon light in here and sparks hitting over to the earth contact I had attached there. Yeah, and then the unit was fixed, and I was super happy about that, because yeah, it took me a year to get the right ideas and some experimentation to verify that the bulbs are still okay. Yeah, and I think for a 13-year-old boy, that's still okay. Yeah, but nevertheless, these things scared the hell out of me. There were times back in the days I didn't want that into my room overnight. I was scared that this thing does something bad to me, because I didn't really understand how it worked. I mean, how it could be that you have something like this, some glass thingy, and sparks coming out of here when you have some earthed metal tip next to it, because that's all glass, so there shouldn't be any high voltage whatsoever breaking out here, but it did. So I think it's now time to putting this back together and have some fun with HF sparks. There's one more thing. Here there's a stamp with a date, and that's probably the manufacturing date of the device. So it's the 19th of November 1928. So that's about 88 years from now. So this is a pretty old device, and yeah, I'm happy that it still works. So let's now put the screws back in, and then we have some fun. Alright, let's do it. Yes! So my skin now feels a little sparkly. Yeah, let's try to do recording in the dark. Yeah, that's more powerful. So now we come to a device that I call the ozone bong. The way it works, you hold it in your hand and there's a cavity inside. And inside this cavity will build up sparks and corona. And that obviously will produce a lot of ozone, and these two thingies here that are supposed to go into your nose and then you breathe. People did strange things back in the days. I will not try it. Okay, let's start small this time. So you hold it in your hand. And there you can already see the sparks that build up with the corona. Let's give it a bit more power. Now I will demonstrate the remaining working vents I have, and yeah, just lay back and enjoy the show. I must admit there was a little bit of pain involved while conducting the experiments. But anyway, let's now come to Nikola Tesla and one of his experiments. Tesla's vision was to provide free energy to each and every one, and the basic idea behind this was just to use a giant Tesla transformer as a transmitter and have smaller entities to receive the energy again and make it usable, for example, to light up a small lamp like this. And since we have a Tesla transformer here, we can repeat the experiment on a smaller basis. So let's try. And as you can see, the lamp is lighting up. I can take it with me. There's no wires, no tricks. So, well, yeah, this idea was never implemented on a large scale. It remained a laboratory experiment. Also because it was a little bit subversive, because how do you charge for free energy? And today, while Advance are still a very successful product, this is Amazon.com. I just entered Violet Wand as a search topic, and look what I get. Portabler, Hochfrequenz, Akne, Haarausfall, Faltenreduzierung, basically against losing hair, against facial aging, and all kinds of stuff. And there's also some that's called King Clap, Elektrostimulationsstab, Neonwand. Yeah, that's all probably a fetish device. We have again for the skin. It should be good for the skin. I mean, I don't know if you see that, but this is still a bit red. I don't know if that's so super good for your skin. Hier portabler HF-Stab, Zeus Electrosex Twilight High Frequency Violet Wand Kit. Again a King Clap, Electrosex, Dr. Clockworks. I was reading Cockworks. Pipe Dream FF Shock Therapy. That's a mushroom electrode for what? Slavic beauty. I don't know. Wanna know what that is? Violet Wand by Carman. Black Rose Doc Johnson Violet Wand. Gems Glass Wand. Anal Plug Lila Crystal. We'll see. That's still very successful. In the fetish world, so to say. Of course, since the Violet Wand got discarded by doctors and and as a medical device, it had to focus on a new market, so to say. Anyway, I discourage to use Violet Wand like I have it for doing erotic plays, because this old electric stuff, you never know how it behaves. It is unsafe just because it's old. It doesn't comply to any modern standards. And I also would not trust these Chinese products here. They are probably also dangerous. So I would say Violet Wand for an erotic application, so to say, is not very suitable and probably dangerous. And especially for the older types, the type I have, I can also explain why. Let's go to the lab again. So how can this be dangerous? First of all, if you watched carefully, I only touched the glass electrodes with my fingers. So I avoided to touch, for example, this directly here with my fingers. I use a pair of scissors with a plastic handle. And I also didn't use this one. So these two would connect me directly to the circuit here, because this has two contacts and I would be connected to the neon plasma, and that has a low ohmic resistance once it's energized. So I would be directly connected to that point of the circuit. So that's the first thing. So the glass electrodes basically give a little bit of additional safety, because you have a capacitance in series, because the glass, that's a dielectric substance. Even if you touch the glass directly or there's an arc coming out of the glass, then you still are insulated by a capacity. So the other point of the primary coil, it's not connected to anywhere. So at least in series, this circuit is not connected to the power line at any point in time. So far the theory. So at least in theory, I should be able to plug this in and still be safe, as I said, in theory. Because especially on higher levels, it might happen that a spark, that an arc comes out of the end of this high voltage coil, of the high voltage part of the circuit, and basically hits this contact or hits the wires here or hits that contact. And if that happens, then you would be connected to the power line directly, because imagine you have an arc arcing to here. Arcs are always have always a low ohmic resistance. So if there's an arc here, then you have an electrical connection to this point of circuit to here or to here. So if you have connected it the circuit in, like it's drawn here, the L1 is here, then you probably have a low ohmic pass directly to the earth. So that still might be somehow safe. But if you connect it the other way around to the power line networks, then you are connected directly to a live wire. And that would not be good. So that would really not be nice. So now I demonstrate the insulation problems I mentioned. So as you see, the insulation is not perfect here, so that's not good. So, and that's why I think at least the older ones of these devices should no longer be used because of these insulation problems. So I hope you enjoyed the tour around my wireless WAN and also the dark sides I've shown you on Amazon. I'm actually very glad that the wireless WANs are still around, because I do not have to worry if a glass tube breaks. I know I can always get a replacement. And yeah, actually, when I was a child, I was very worried about my glass tubes, because oh, they are so rare, and I will never get a replacement if one breaks. So now I don't have to be worried anymore. So yeah, that's it for now. Have a nice day and enjoy playing with your wireless WAN. Bye bye.